Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Patrick Ding here. Now, if you're ever selling something a little more complicated or complex, like some kind of technology, like a software, an API, or any type of service that requires a little more work, you know that sometimes you might have to bring multiple people in a deal. For example, if you got to bring a sales consultant, a sales engineer, or anybody who does any of the technical work, sometimes when you do this, it might be a little confusing to run your sales meeting because there's too many people in there. And sometimes when things get a little too confusing or complicated, or when there's too many people on a call or in a meeting, it could really slow things down and end up killing a deal. So what I want to do for this video is show you exactly how you can sell as a team and bring in multiple people like sales consultants and sales engineers in order to close a deal. And you want to make sure you watch this video until the end, because if you don't know how to handle your sales meetings and bring in all your support and sales consultants, you might end up making the deal a little too complicated and it may just end up dying. So that said, if you want to get started with this video, make sure you give this video a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, and let's dive in. All right, so for this video, what I want to do is I want to share my experiences when I used to work at Oracle, right? And I was selling HR software. So who are the key players when it comes to selling complex deals like technology? Well, let's go ahead and write this down. We got the players over here. So usually you have the account executive, which is what I used to be when I worked at Oracle, and that is going to be the quarterback of the deal, the person who actually closes, right? So we got the account executive. Who else do we bring into the deal? Well, a lot of times we have somebody called a sales consultant or a sales engineer. So I'm gonna call that sales consultant for SC. And what their job is to do is to really support the account executive and answer any technical questions when it comes to closing the deal and making the client feel comfortable with moving forward. Now, the last player, obviously, that we have is gonna be the prospect, right? And the prospect is going to be the person that you're selling into. They're evaluating whether or not they should buy from you. And so as an account executive and sales consultant, it's your job to work together to sell into that prospect. All right, so now we got 3 players on the board. So when you start your meeting, what's going to happen? Well, you have an introduction, right? Let's just call it intro for now. So sometimes you're doing a meeting on the phone, or sometimes you might be doing it in person. You're still gonna use the same format. So let's say I'm going into a meeting with a prospect, right, in person, and I got my sales consultant with me. In the introduction, all you really have to do is just introduce each other, and you say something like, let's say my sales consultant, her name is Sally, and I say, hey Sally, I want you to meet John. He's been working with us for a while, and he's trying to see whether or not we're a good fit to work together. Sally, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Sally will say whatever her introduction is, what she does at the company, and how she's gonna bring value. I'll say, hey John, why don't you just tell a little bit about yourself to Sally and share what you do at the company? And John will share his story and everything like that. So now everybody is introduced. The next step, once everyone has that introduction, is you wanna set the agenda for the meeting. And this is gonna be critical because if you set the agenda right, the rest of the meeting is going to be fairly easy. And all that means is you wanna set the right expectations for both sides so everybody knows what to expect. So for example, if I'm selling HR software to John and I have my sales consultant Sally with me, I would say, all right everybody, so the reason why I wanna put this meeting together is because I'm really just trying to see whether or not we're a good fit to work with each other. John, we're gonna ask you a few questions to see exactly what you wanna do and how we might be able to help. And of course, you can ask us any questions along the way. And by the end of the meeting, we're gonna see whether or not we're a good fit to work together. And if we are, we're gonna move to the next step. But if not, that's totally okay. Is that okay with you, John? Right? So once I set the expectations just like that, John's gonna naturally say, sure, let's go ahead and get started. Now the agenda is set. So what's the next step? Well, the next step is the discovery, meaning you have to discover what pains John has and how you're gonna be able to sell them. So that's gonna be the middle of the meeting. So at a lot of companies like an Oracle, a Microsoft, or a Salesforce, they'll have something called a discovery call. And some other people in the consulting world, they might call this a strategy session, pretty much the same thing. All you do is you get the salespeople to ask a bunch of questions to the prospect, and the prospect talks about what they want, what their problems are, and you're gonna figure out how you can solve it. So in the discovery phase, if you are talking about something really technical, right? So let's say how a software integrates with a database. the account executive typically isn't gonna know the answer on how to do this because they're not the ones actually coding and they don't really spend their time in this way, right? So the sales consultant is the person who will ask those questions and will answer any of those very technical questions. So in the discovery phase, you want your sales consultant to just keep asking questions, right? So exactly, how does your database work? How does your software work? What are you trying to do? And then you just ask questions for maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes to really get a deep understanding of where the prospect is at and where they want to go and how you can solve their pains. So once you do that for maybe 20, 30 minutes, you get the sales consultants to keep asking questions. What's gonna be the next step? Well, you gotta finish the meeting, right? So typically at the end of this, you're gonna have a close. Now, when I say close, I'm not necessarily saying that you have to close the deal right there on the spot, because for complex deals, it might take maybe weeks or months before it actually closes. So when I say close here, I mean close the next step. What needs to happen after this? And typically for complex deals, once you do the discovery call and you understand the prospect's pain, all you gotta do is close them and get them to the next meeting, which is usually a demonstration or some type of presentation to show what your product does and how it can bring value to your prospect. So when you're closing out, here is what's gonna happen. The sales consultant will probably stop talking at this point and the account executive then comes in, takes over the conversation, so that person closes out. So if you kind of think about this, the account executive only talks in the introduction and the close. In the middle, usually it's a sales consultant that will do most of the talking, right? So now account executive comes in and he says, hey John, thanks for sharing all the information you did with us. We really appreciate that. Now, if you don't mind, how about I'll go ahead and share what the next steps will typically be. And then John will say, okay, sure, share what's the next step. And you can say something like, well, typically after we do a discovery call like this and we identify the problems that you have, the next typical step is to schedule a next meeting or a presentation where we're gonna show you exactly how we can solve your problems based on everything we talked about today. So if it's okay with you, how about we go ahead and schedule a time for this meeting next week? And then John will either say yes or no. If he says no, you figure out why. If he says yes, then easy. Then you just schedule the next meeting and you're gonna move in the next process of the sales cycle. So now here's a tip for you guys. Once you schedule the next meeting and you actually go to that meeting, the account executive definitely wants to be there. Sales consultant, you wanna bring that person there too, because on a presentation, a lot of times it might be a little more complex and that person is great for that job. Also, when you're doing the presentation, you wanna make sure that the only things you talk about are the things you talk about in the discovery call, right? If you're selling a complex product or service, you can do many different things, right? You might have a robust product, a really good product, but the thing is, people don't care about all the different features and benefits that you have. The only thing they care about is how you're gonna help them solve their specific problem. So again, when you're doing a presentation, only talk about the things that the prospect cares about and nothing more. And once you do the presentation correctly and they can see that you can solve their problem, then they're gonna move forward and actually buy whatever it is that you have. All right, so with that said, that's pretty much how you want to handle your meetings when it comes to being an account executive and sales consultant and working together using this very simple framework. If you enjoy this video, make sure you give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on the notification bell. And if you want to take your sales game to the next level, I actually created a free in-depth training. To get access to that training, all you got to do is click the link in the description and it's going to take you there. So with that said, my name is Patrick Dang and I'm going to see you guys in the next one.